Thank you for inviting me. This is a real thrill. Larry and I talked about this about a year ago, and it's finally happening, and I'm excited. And one of the things I did in kind of preparation to coming to FI in this really historic building and with such a rich and long history is I asked my archivist to go into the Ayn Rand Institute archives and pull the exchange of letters that happened between Ayn Rand and Leonard Read in the 1940s. I don't know how many of you know this, but they were fairly close, and there was a lot of correspondence. We just went up, and I got the benefit of seeing this side of the correspondence, right? What's in the archives here. So it's fascinating. And my topic tonight is very fitting, because the topic tonight really continues the conversation that was started, if we look back at the correspondence, as early as 1944 between Ayn Rand and Leonard, and with the question of the role of economics and the role of philosophy and morality in our defense of capitalism. And you know, one of the advantages of speaking to this group tonight is I can basically cut out a third of my normal lecture, because when I'm out there with college students or just with miscellaneous groups, I have to spend a significant amount of time basically coming to the conclusion of this first third of my lecture that free markets work, right? That's it, just that they work. And of course you can't really do that in 15 minutes, but at least give them a hint that there's a possibility that people believe that free markets do work. And you have to address kind of things like the financial crisis wasn't caused by Wall Street, it was caused by governments, and you have to mention the Great Depression and say, look, the economists today mostly get it, right? They don't quite perfectly get it, but they get that it wasn't just markets. Right? And you have to do a lot of this, and the nice thing here is that I don't have to. I can skip all that, right? And I can start by saying, if capitalism works, and when I talk about capitalism, again, I usually go with this, I'm talking about real free markets, right? Free of? Yeah, well, you guys know, right? The students go free markets, and I say free of what? And they kind of scratch, and yeah, that's right, free stuff. Free markets are where you get free stuff. I'm talking about real free markets where the government does one thing, and that is protect individual rights. And my argument to the students is, to the extent we have tried free markets, to the extent that we have tried capitalism, capitalism works. Free markets work. If your measure of work means creation of wealth, higher standard of living, the conditions of the poor, social mobility, any one of the economic parameters that we understand, it's self-evident. You just need eyes, really, and some knowledge of history, and you can see it, right? And on top of that, we have had great economists. I mean, truly great economists. Economists who get it, who have shown Keynesianism to be wrong and Marxism to be wrong. That have shown that the market can't solve all those complex issues that people always raise up. Well, what about this and what about that? And, you know, and we've got solutions to them. You know, and some of them even so recognized that they got Nobel Prizes for economics. So this is not some hidden clique of economists somewhere buried somewhere that nobody's ever heard about. We've got economists, great economists, who have solved the fundamental issues of economics. We understand that capitalism works. We understand why it works. We can address from an economic perspective every one of the challenges that people throw at us. And I'm sure you've all been in rooms where they all raise their hand, what about, you know, what about the poor? What about pollution? What about monopolies is my favorite, right? What about monopolies? And we've got answers. We've got answers, and it's not I or even Ayn Rand who came up with those answers. There's great economists who've done that work, and it's fabulous. So the question has to be asked, right? Why are we losing? Because the evidence suggests, if we take the size of government to suggest the you know, the disappearance of markets or the lack of freedom, government only grows for 100 years, or at least since the Great Depression. The United States government has only grown. The number of regulations have increased, the amount of gun spending has increased, and you know, the last flurry in just the last 2 years, I mean, people are suddenly shocked that we have big government, but all of us have known that this is a trend that has been going on for a long time. And as I like to tell my conservative friends, even Ronald Reagan grew government. Spending grew. Yes, some things were deregulated, but other things were not. And in some respects, regulations increased, or the enforcement became more brutal. Just some of you might remember Wall Street in the 1980s. Not a pleasant place if you were trying to make money, given Spitzer on the prowl. Right? Not Spitzer. I'm sorry, Giuliani. What am I talking about? Spitzer's mentor, Giuliani, the guy he learns everything from. Giuliani on the prowl. I'm sorry, I know a lot of New Yorkers like Giuliani, but I will never forgive him for what he did to my personal finance hero, Michael Milken. He deserves it. So why are we losing? Why are we losing? And you know, again, I don't have to, nice thing about this audience, I don't have to explain that we're losing. Hopefully we can turn it around, but things are only getting more desperate, right? The losses are becoming more real to more people. The loss of freedom is becoming more real to more people. The economic disaster that still lies in America's future is becoming more real to more people. But this is a trend that started a long time ago and continues unstopped in spite of all the knowledge we have attained in economics, in spite of all the efforts we have made. It doesn't seem to make a dent. And my argument tonight is that at the end of the day, it's not about economics. It's about something deeper. So let's step back a second and let me ask you, what are markets about? What are markets about? What is the free market about? Why do people participate in the marketplace? Why do people produce? So it's beneficial, profit. So why does, I always, those of you who've seen me talk before are probably bored by this stunt, but why did Steve Jobs create this? This is an iPhone, by the way, not.
To make money.
To make money, right? But not only to make money. It's not all about money. We're not materialists.
His idea.
It's his idea, his passion. He wanted to see beautiful things that he imagined out there in the world.
Only if they could make money.
Only if they could make money. Only if he thought they could make money, because you're never guaranteed, right? But it was his ideas. How many focus groups did Steve Jobs do? Zero. I always upset marketing professors when I do this, right? Because he violated every rule of Marketing 101 because he produced products he loved and that he believed you would love, but you didn't know you would love them, and there was no point asking you because you didn't know you would. That's goes back to Say's idea that production drives consumption, not the other way around. It's what we produce. Then, you know, remember the cell phones when they first came out? I said, what do I need one of these for? I mean, and then we bought one, right? We bought one because my wife was commuting, and we bought one for emergencies, right? We'd never use it, only for emergencies, right? 3 months later, we've got 2 of them, we're talking all the time, then the kids get them, and then, you know. But we didn't know, but you know, the market drove that, right? Consumption follows the wisdom of the producers. Steve Jobs made this because he loved it and because he was going to make a lot of money. And I like to tell you know, my utilitarian friends, he did not wake up every morning thinking, how could he maximize social utility? Not his purpose. And if he really cared about my well-being, then he could have sold me this for less than half price and still made a profit. These things have 60% profit margins. Right? Now maybe it's cut a little bit now that he has more competition, but in the early days, big profit margins. All Apple products do, and I've been buying them for a long time. So in 2008, I went and bought one of these for the first time, you know, when they first came out. And the economy was kind of spiraling out of control and things were slowing down. So I went and I bought an iPhone to stimulate the economy. Right? I mean, isn't that why you guys go to the mall and do shopping? Right? So why do you go and shoe shopping? Why do we consume? We consume to make whose life better? Society's? The greater good? No, we consume to make our own lives better. To the extent of our knowledge and ability, we're trying to enhance our own lives. Markets are about the pursuit of self-interest. They're about people pursuing their own interests. And this isn't a revelation, certainly not to this group, right? Adam Smith understood this. This is, why does the baker bake the bread? Because he cares about us? No. Because he's trying to make a living. He's trying to feed his kids. This is how, this is his work. He gets, I don't know if Adam Smith said this, but he gets pride out of baking the bread. But he makes money. It's about money, right? And the trucker delivers the bread because he needs to make a living. Doesn't care about the baker. Doesn't care about the grocery store. And that's how markets are. Nothing's changed from Adam Smith. If anything, we can see it in more real terms today. Markets are about self-interest. They're about, to be a little bit cruder about it, use a cruder word in our culture, they're about being selfish. They're about going out there and pursuing your own selfish interests. And here I mean by selfish, what's good for you, right? What enhances your life, what betters your life. And yet, what does our culture think about self-interest? What are we taught from when we're this little about being self-interested? Well, I come from a good Jewish family, right? He knows what's coming, huh? And I was taught from when I was very little to think of myself last. Think of others first, I was told. This is the essence of virtue. Be yeah, well, of course they didn't really mean it, but... and if they did, they failed miserably, right? Be selfless. And if you boarded a good, I think, Christian home, then sacrifice was added on top of that, right? And this is not unique to religion. All secular philosophers, really, since the Greeks, have preached that the essence of virtue is being selfless, and that ultimately self-sacrifice is the best morally you can achieve. So Bill Gates, when he's making billions and billions and billions of dollars for himself by selling us products that we value enormously, that's why we're willing to buy them, right? You buy Windows or whatever for $100, how much is it worth to you? A lot more than $100. Think of the value of a lifetime that you've received from Microsoft. Think of how much you've paid them. You've paid them a fraction, a tiny fraction, of the value you've received from their products. And not only is the direct value, but the networking effect, the fact that we all use Microsoft, even those of us on an Apple, use Office, right, so we can communicate. I mean, the value is, you can't measure it. And yet when Bill Gates was making his money, from an ethical perspective, what did we think of him? Well, monopolist, but just from a, we didn't really think of him, right? At most, he was kind of neutral. Probably a lot of people wrote, I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff people are writing about Steve Jobs. It started happening about 3-4 days after he died, so that, they respected him for a few days. And then they came out and said he was selfish, all he did was produce products he liked, he wasn't philanthropic, there's no Steve Jobs Foundation, haven't heard of it? Apple, this is amazing. When Steve Jobs joined Apple, he was kicked out first. And when the new bosses came into Apple, they established an Apple charitable thing. When Steve Jobs rejoined Apple, he said, we can't do this, that's ridiculous, we're barely making any money. And he eliminated. And he never reinstituted it. Apple gave no charity, right? Steve Jobs' view was, if shareholders want to give charity, great. But it's not our role as a corporation, that's not our purpose. So he didn't give any charity. As soon as he died, basically this last Wednesday, the new CEO of Apple announced that they have started giving charity again. So here's Bill Gates, right, who is making all this money. He's not a good guy. He's at best a neutral from a moral perspective. In business, we all admire him, but from an ethical perspective, the culture, right, very neutral to negative on him. When does he become positive? When he starts giving it away. So we live in a culture where making money is from an ethical perspective, giving it away, great. Now, I can guarantee Bill Gates' sainthood. I can. I've got an in with the Pope, and I can guarantee this. What do you think Bill Gates has to do to become a saint? He needs to give it all away and move into a tent. We need to see blood. We need to see real sacrifice. We need to see him in pain. Pain is virtue. Suffering is virtue. Sacrifice is virtue. Making your life better. Making money. Helping other people through trade. No good. Because why? Everybody will admit Bill Gates helped other people through Microsoft. But what's his sin? He benefited at the same time. He did it for self-interested reasons. You know, there's even the case, you know these microloans that they give in the third world countries? Well, there's a group that does this and actually makes a profit at it. Right? They actually do, I think they're primarily South American, they actually make a profit on it because, you know, and they are lambasted. Because that's not the purpose of the microloans. It's not to be usurers and bankers. You know, they're no good. The ones who do it out of China. Now, the results of this group who makes money are tremendous, right? Why do they make money out of it? Because they've given loans to people who've actually produced something and therefore can pay them back. So it means to me that they've actually been super productive, right? That's what does profit represent? It represents production. It represents creation of values. It represents trade. So here are these people who are super productive. They're ridiculed and shunned by the micro-lending community. Why? Because they're making a profit at it. Because they're not sacrificing. Because they're benefiting at the same time. Now, this is the morality we have out there. People don't live it. Somebody said before, they don't really mean it, right? You know how we, that reminds me, you know how when our kids are little, 3 years old, Johnny's playing in the sandbox, and Sam comes along and he says, I want to play with your truck, right? What do we tell Johnny? Share. We said share. We don't say trade. You guys are free market guys. I told my kids trade. You know, ask what he has to offer and, cut a deal. Right? But we say share. Now, why do we do that? Because it's a little bizarre, because Johnny knows, he doesn't really know yet, but he will know in a few years as he grows up, that if a stranger came to mommy and asked for the car keys, she would say no. See, we're hypocrites. We're cynics. We live in a cynical culture where the moral ideal is unachievable. To really live the moral ideal, we'd all have to be Mother Teresa's. We'd all have to show pain. We'd all have to give up what we do and show pain. But we still believe that that is the moral ideal. So we project it onto our kids. We want our kids to live it even for a brief period in childhood. As soon as we get to adulthood, we know the guy will drive off in our car and we don't want to do it anymore, right? And we become cynical about it. But it's that moral ideal that's out there. And what Ayn Rand argued, and I think we've only seen this reinforced over and over and over again in our culture, is as long as that moral code is the dominant moral code, even if people don't practice it, but if that's what's causing them to feel guilty, if that's what's causing them to vote in a particular way, or to be attracted to particular politics or politicians, or particular government policies because it appeases this notion, as long as that is the morality out there, we will not have capitalism. Because capitalism is about self-interest. It's not about economics. It's not about creation of wealth. It's about self-interest. Fundamentally, in the marketplace, any marketplace, when people come, producers and consumers, they're trading for mutual benefit. One is trading for their own benefit. That's just the reality of it. Now, the people who believe in self-sacrifice, the morality, Ayn Rand called it altruism. Philosophers have called this altruism. Altruism has been somewhat perverted by modern culture to be being nice to people and being benevolent. That's not what altruism means. Altruism means self-sacrifice in the most harsh terms possible. There's another little trick they play on us, and I think that this trick works very effectively. When we hear the word self-interest, when we hear the term, even when I said selfishness in this room, people were squirming a little bit, right? People were uncomfortable. And this is a room that's pretty friendly. You can imagine what happens out there, right? When I say markets about being selfish, people go, well, we knew this was bad stuff. We knew capitalism was evil. Right? Why? What is it about selfishness, about self-interest, that people are so uncomfortable, beyond the fact that they think that there's this other morality and that's the ideal? What is it about these terms that make people so resent them and make people so literally uncomfortable? You can see people squirming in their seats when this is talked about. What do we associate with selfishness? What are we being taught that self-interest means? I mean, do most people think of self-interest as pursuing your own long-term rational interests? No. What do they think? What's that? Callousness towards others. They've got a poster child for this. You know, who's the poster child for selfishness? Gordon Gekko's good, but Gordon Gekko nobody remembers. He's like a movie from the 80s, right? Bernie Madoff. You know, Bernie Madoff, I think Bernie Madoff did what he did just to become a great example for me in my talks. Because I couldn't have scripted it better. This guy is such an example of what the culture thinks selfishness is. They believe selfishness is, I want some money, I should take some money at all costs, no matter who I hurt, no matter whether I lie, steal, cheat, no matter if I land up in jail, no matter if I'm unhappy and miserable and so on for the rest of my life. If I want something, I take it, that's selfishness. Right? They equate selfishness with whim, with immediate desire, with doing whatever you feel like doing, with lying, stealing, cheating, backstabbing, and so on. Well, I'm here to tell you he wasn't selfish. This is going to be a hard sell, I can tell already, but... So I love Bernie Madoff because he's a great example for exactly this. That's not self-interested. Not if we understand self-interest to mean making your life better, making your life happier, making your life more fulfilling, or in the Aristotelian sense, a flourishing life, life as a human being to its fullest potential, right? Liars, cheaters, stealers live miserable, pathetic lives. Many of them put on great acts. That's why, you know, they can get away with the lying. But it's an act. And this is why Bernie Madoff's so good, because just this week, Madoff was interviewed, and he said that he's happier in jail than he was before he was caught. And I believe him. Think about what it would take. Think about what it would take to lie to your best friends, your golfing buddies, the people within your tight-knit community. I mean, as we all know, he stole primarily from other Jews who played golf in the same country club he did, who socialized in the same places he did. It looks like lied to his family. He had to deal with them every single day. I mean, you know, even little lies are hard work. I mean, have you tried it lately? It's tough. And as we get older, it's tougher, because I find remembering what really happened is hard. If I lie, I have to remember what really happened and what I lied about. And who I lied about, and why I lied, and when I lied. I mean, it's just way too complicated. And this is really, but this is true. Life requires specific, real processes. It doesn't just happen. It's not just what we want. It's not just what we whim. It's not just what we feel. To be successful in life requires what? At least according to Rand. It requires thought. It requires reason. It requires rationality. To figure out what's good for us. Why we shouldn't take the cocaine when it's so readily available. Or why we shouldn't take the money when it's so readily available. It requires thought. What do I want to do with my life for the next 40 years? What career do I want to pursue? How do you succeed in this career? What actually I have to do? That's all rationality, thought, effort. I like to say, and I mean this completely, that selfishness is incredibly hard work. It's not about whims. Self-interest is about figuring out, including when you go to the mall. We all know how much trouble we can get into if we use our whims to decide what to buy and what not to, right? We all know that if we just consume and don't save, we get into trouble. We're discovering this on a grand scale of government policy these days. But much more importantly, we know in our own lives that you have to save. You have to produce before you consume. Right? You have to manage how much debt you take on. Otherwise, your life falls apart. And these are easy decisions. These are not the hard decisions in life. I used to ask my students in my class, I used to ask them, how many of you, when you were trying to decide on a major in school, made a list of all the possible professions and then ranked them based on their social utility? There's usually one poor bastard in the back who raises their hand. And everybody looks at him, feels sorry for him, and we go on, right? And then I say, how many of you chose your profession based on what you really thought would be good for you? You would enjoy, you would make money at, you would prosper in. And you know, most of the class raises their hand, and I said, you selfish bastards. But that's what self-interest is about. It's about making those kind of decisions and doing it rationally, using the tools that we have. And if you believe that your rational faculty, is the mechanism by which you thrive in this world, that you make the most of your life, then why would you want to lie? Right? You know the term in computers, there's a term called garbage in, garbage out. Well, that's true of your mind. Garbage in, garbage out. And lying is a form of garbage in. It's a form of self-deception. Trying to deceive other people, you're deceiving yourself. You're giving your rational faculty falsehoods to deal with. Not good. Not good. So, self-interest properly understood is not about the whim. It's not about being Bernie Madoff. It's a complete rejection of this idea of sacrifice, which I don't think, if we accept that morality, I do not think we can justify capitalism. Doesn't matter what the economic theories say. So what we need is a positive theory of self-interest. What we need is Ayn Rand's moral defense of capitalism, moral defense of rationality, moral defense of egoism, of self-interest. Okay. And as I said, the beginning of that moral defense is around being rational. Applying one's rationality and reality to the problem of human survival is what? Is being productive. Productiveness is an enormous virtue in Ayn Rand's moral theory. So when you look at a Bill Gates making billions, Ayn Rand says not only is he a great businessman, not only is he making a lot of money, he is a moral giant. Just for that, put aside that we don't know what his personal life is, but for that activity, for his activities qua businessman, he is a moral giant. And yes, how much money he creates in a sense measures that. Because the fact that he's creating a lot of, that he's making a lot of money means he's created a lot of value. He's created a lot, made his life better, looks like, you know, exerted himself to the fullest, really was passionate about his work, loved it. I think he left Microsoft because of the Justice Department case. I think it wore him down and exhausted him, and he just didn't want to deal with it anymore. The bureaucracy of it all, I don't know if you know about all the impositions the Justice Department put here and in Europe, put on Microsoft and turned it into this pretty bureaucratic company that it is today. And people complain there's no innovation in Microsoft. Well, you know, what do you expect? Steve Jobs, you know, a great banker, J.P. Morgan, Carnegie, you know, we can say that in their business lives, these are moral, ethical giants because they're taking care of their own lives. They're clearly being rational there. These guys didn't lie, cheat, or steal, or they would have never gotten to where they got. And of course, there's no evidence of that if you look at the historical evidence of the so-called robber barons. Right? Capitalism, trading. What's a trade? Right? Somebody said mutually beneficial, right? You know, for students, You say win-win, right? It's easy, win-win. Both parties win. I don't have to go through the little mechanism I do with students because they don't get it. So you have to tell them, you know, you go to the other dealer, you get a car for $20,000, it's worth more than $20,000 to you, it's worth less than, you know, and all that. Win-win. Right? Well, so in Rand's view, if you're pro-self-interest from a moral perspective, then what is a trade? A trade is this incredibly moral activity in which both sides are pursuing their own self-interest. Both sides, if the trade is a good trade, achieving their own self-interest. Both sides are better off. That's it. That's the end, and it's moral. It's a good thing because people pursue their own self-interest. Right? Now, this is a different approach than Adam Smith's. Note that Adam Smith justifies the actions of people's self-interest in some sense in a utilitarian, social utility. He's not a utilitarian, but a social utility kind of function. Society is better off because we all pursue our self-interest. Ayn Rand says, yeah, okay, society is better off. But what's really important is you're better off, and you're better off, and he's better off, and we're all better off. That each one of us individually, to the extent that we're rational and productive, are better off. And that is the essence of her morality, right? And her defense of trade, and her defense of business, and ultimately, as a consequence, of her defense of capitalism. And I think it's deeper than that, right? What kind of political system? The people who are really pursuing their own self-interest, who really want to pursue their own self-interest in the sense that I just described, in a sense of really working at making their lives the best that they can be, knowing that they will fail sometimes, just like Steve Jobs got fired from Apple, and knocked down. He was, I think, depressed for a year, right? But learning from that and rising up by your own bootstraps, you know, succeeding and building on success, but using your own values, your own mind, your own choices, your own decisions, because that's what morality is about. What kind of political system do people like that want? Do they want somebody sitting on their shoulders telling them, don't do that, don't do that. Oh, that's dangerous. You better watch it. You know, you want to help those people, don't help those people. You know, sounds like a Jewish mother, right? Wouldn't want that. But that's paternalistic government. That is exactly the government that we have. Telling businessmen and telling all of us how to live, where to live, what to live for, choosing our values for us. You know, what drugs to take. The best example is, and I'm talking about legal drugs. Not that I have an objection to illegal ones. I have an objection to them, but not in terms of legality, but the legal ones, right? You should take Vioxx for a while. The government approved it, therefore it's okay for you to take Vioxx. Then you can't take Vioxx, but it's the only drug that helps me. Ooh, but we've decided the risk to you is too high. I want to take the risk. Who cares? Who cares? I know people who Vioxx was the only drug that could get them pain relief. And the pain was so intense that it was driving them crazy. And they were willing to take on the 10% risk. It wasn't that high, but let's say a 10% risk of stroke or heart disease. They were willing to take that risk. But big government sitting on the shoulder said, no, you can't do that. Somebody else is choosing your values, taking you how much risk, telling you what you can and cannot do. People who want to live for themselves, who want to choose their own values, who want to pursue their own happiness, want to be left alone. They want a government that protects them from thieves and crooks and criminals and frauds and Bernie Madoffs, and want to be left alone otherwise. By the way, why couldn't the SEC catch Bernie Madoff? It took them years. They had whole reports on what he was doing wrong.
No motivation. It wasn't public facing. It was private committee.
Yeah, but they investigated him a little bit, and it, you know, people complained about him. I'll tell you why they couldn't get him. They couldn't get him because they were too busy investigating me. And you, and every one of you who trades in stocks or does anything in the financial world. There are so many rules and regulations. I have a little fund and we buy some stock here and then. You get 5% of a stock, you have to file a 13 something, and you get 10% of a stock, and you have to let the world know why you took 10% of the stock in. It goes on and on and on, and there's so much paperwork, and there's so many things that worry about Mark Cuban selling some stock that he might be doing insider trading, and there's no end to what the SEC has to do. They can't catch the crooks, which is the only legitimate function of the SEC. So people with that kind of self-esteem, people with that kind of view of their own life and view their life with that kind of level of importance don't want government in their lives. Capitalism would be easy to convince them of. The economics would just, I mean, you'd still have to study it, still have to teach it, but it would be easy to teach them. We wouldn't have this battle, we would be willing. This fundamentally is a battle about the souls of Americans. It's a battle about morality, a battle about ethics. And it's a battle, I know, that most of us are pretty uncomfortable fighting. But it's a battle that Ayn Rand has really equipped us to fight. And I believe that we have a shot. I believe that it's still not too late. And the reason I believe this is that the fact is that Americans are the most selfish people on earth. And I mean that as this profound compliment. And there's a reason for that. America was founded, to me the most important document in political history is the Declaration of Independence. I think you can't understand the Constitution without understanding the Declaration. It is the most important document in American history. And the Declaration of Independence, it set the stage for a people pursuing their own self-interest. The founders understood this at some profound level. They didn't articulate it. They didn't go with it. They didn't have a whole morality worked out. It took Ayn Rand, I think, to make that. But they understood it because in the Declaration, each one of us has an inalienable right. And you know what inalienable means? It means nobody can take it away from you. Not 50%, not 52%, not 99.9%. It's yours forever by virtue of you being alive. As long as you don't violate other people's rights, you have an inalienable right to what? To your own life. Your own life. Not to help other people. Not, you can help other people, but not to be forced to do that. Not to maximize social utility, but to live your life the way you choose to live it. And to your own liberty. Which means making decisions and acting in pursuit of your life, of your values. And in the most selfish political statement in human history, every human being has an inalienable right to pursue their own happiness. Now, if we can capture what that means, and I think Americans deep down at an emotional level get this, right? And this is where I find the hope. But if we can resurrect that, if we can give it meaning, if we can spread it out across the country, we win. Thank you all.